There was a shortwave trough ejecting into the central southern plains, coming out of New Mexico, Colorado. Surface low, I think, was somewhere near the southeast Colorado, southwest Kansas border, which is pretty much dead on climatology, with a dry line arcing southeast across the Oklahoma and Texas panhandles. And from what I remember in terms of my strategy that day was we had dew points maybe approaching 70, getting up into parts of Oklahoma during the morning. So the idea was I'm just going to follow the 68 to 70 dew points, how far northwest they got, and then somewhere where that crossed under roughly the corridor of the mid-level jet, because it wasn't an exceptionally strong wave. This was probably more like 50 knot mid-level flow at its peak, from what I remember. So I thought I'll take the strongest deep layer shear, low-level moisture overlap, and where that crosses over the dry line, just basically try to get the storm far enough south that kind of gets in that zone. And so that's really all I was thinking about. You notice I haven't mentioned any composite parameters, or none of these things that were in use, really.
I have the map somewhere. I drew a little weather map, surface map. Was my most accurate forecast ever. And part of it, of course, was luck, because it just works that way sometimes. You make the greatest forecast on Earth, and a lot of times it's wrong. This was X marks the spot day. I mean, everything, the dry line, the way everything's set up, it was pretty obvious within maybe 70, 80 miles of where we really thought there was going to be something.
So back then, I remember the Thompson phone, we had this digital raw output of the data. And what that meant is I could pull up an ob like Gauge, Guyman, Dodge City, and the model would forecast basically would tell you it was all code, it was all numbers, right? And it was like the wind direction, and then the what the speed was in knots, and then also the temperature and dew point, and then you would look at what's called the rising, the vertical velocity, the rising motion, and then you would watch if the winds were backed or veered, and then you also watch for upper motion. And did the model put out QPF?
Over the years, I've chased a lot with Roger Edwards, and I do remember talking to him sometimes, say, mid-morning, and he wanted to go more up into southwest Kansas, closer to the triple point. I thought the deep layer winds were a little stronger farther south, maybe a little better classic supercell environment. But again, it was just, minor change across there. Yeah, when we went out, the storms formed, I believe it was in the northeast Texas panhandle. And the initiation was slow. As you mentioned, there were several attempts at updrafts, and the initial storm wasn't particularly impressive. And this was probably getting towards 7 o'clock. But the thing was, in terms of thinking, did I pick the right target, there was only one other updraft you could see, and it was down close to Interstate 40. And so we're talking up in the far northeast panhandle all the way down to I-40 in the distance. There's one big updraft there, so it's 80 to 100 miles to the south. And it was like either the cluster of updrafts we're on or that one. And you can't chase both of them. There's no way. And, there was sort of the buyer's remorse, because you have a good distant view of the southern one, and you see a nice solid updraft and back shear and overshooting top. And we're closer to ours, so you can't see that. And you're like, well, does this storm look that good from the south as that one does down to the south? And it's like, well, we can't get down there anyway, so.
All the information we would get back then would be mostly by sitting in a National Weather Service office. And they would give us information. Sometimes they would let us use some of the equipment depending on what office it was. And a lot of times we would just sit there until something happened. Something popped up on the radar, because again, we didn't have a radar in the car or a laptop. And we would kind of look at the storm and determine if it looked like it was going to be worth chasing. Believe it or not, that was a very efficient way of chasing, because unlike nowadays when you're looking at a radar and there's 5 or 6 cells, back then it forced you to be patient. It forced you to pick the right storm, hopefully, and then blast out of the Weather Service office like a fire department and run to the storm. We literally drove right to the right storm. It went up really, I remember the cumulonimbus, just the way it was forming, the solid clouds and everything. There was so much instability. It was obvious something was going to happen. There was going to be some type of severe weather event. And then as it went on, the day progressed, it was obvious, there was probably going to be some kind of tornadic event.
We drove through what would be the clear slot right under it, had north or northwest winds, 20, 25 knots, and then cut through just on the immediate southeast side of the kind of swirly cloud base. But again, rotation wasn't exceptionally strong. the first real clue that we had that this was getting interesting, and this is about 8:30, so we probably got 30 minutes of decent daylight, at least with with no other clouds blocking anything, was there was a big surge in inflow from the south, and one of the section roads, it all of a sudden started picking up dirt, and I'm going to guess the wind gusts were 50 to 60 in this narrow channel coming in out of the south to the south-southeast, and it picked up a bunch of tumbleweeds. And I remember a couple of them hit the side of the guy's car that we were chasing in, and one of them, like the stalk of it, hit pretty hard, and it left a little bit of a dent. And everyone in the car started, kind of like, wait a minute, what's happening, or is something forming right on us? And it was like, we stopped, and I looked out, and you see this big swirl in the base, and the clear slot had wrapped around. Again, there's almost no precipitation around it, and there's little streamers of dust coming in. There was the one that we had been in, and there's another one like from the southwest and something in from the north, I think, and they all kind of collided. And we're talking maybe a quarter mile to our northwest out in the field. And I just remember the dust kind of colliding and is sitting there. And then right in somewhere in the core of that, this little swirl forms. And that was the start of the Laverne tornado.
It was like 100 yards from us. We're just sitting at the intersection filming.
Oh, there we go. Good tornado. Tornado on the ground.
And it got bigger and bigger, and then finally the tornado descended, and you could see the full cone.
It's gonna miss us here, right, Jeff? What? We're in a good spot? Yes. Yeah. Good spot. You gotta pass the road, right? Yeah. Right the road. Yeah, hit that.
Going up until we get some contrast with it. 8:36, have a large tornado on the ground.
Well, believe it or not, when I was so excited when I started the video camera, I hit the button twice, the record button twice. It was one of my all-time screw-ups, and I hit it twice, and it wasn't recording for the first few minutes, and then eventually I caught my mistake.
Because it was real dry, kind of high plains, dry and arid out there, it quickly gathered a lot of dust. So the bark looked a lot worse than the actual tornado was, right?
Out, about 200 yards wide. And Bill, look about 200 yards wide. 200, 300 yards wide. A couple hundred yards wide.
We were pushing film at the time because it looks, if you see the photograph, it looks like there was a lot of light, but it was actually getting pretty dark at that time. Back then, that would have been pushing probably 400, what we call 400 ASA film to the max. So if you went anywhere beyond that, it would have looked like crap. But we were really pushing the film to get a good shot at that point and trying to stay. Fortunately, the tornado paralleled highway.
That is cool. Damn, Warren's forecasting pays off. That is wild.
We were able to just stay right next to it in the light. Fortunately, a lot of times you'll have storms or the supercell will be blocking the light. This had enough light down below it coming through the lower levels. We were able to get a decent shot, which is unusual because a lot of times you have no contrast.
So it got big, it was slow, and it just tracked, maybe it was tracking like 10 miles an hour, very slow to the north-northeast, just southwest of Laverne.
Okay, right down the road, right there is Laverne.
Oh, it's big. It's real big.
Laverne. Yeah.
It's really big. Tell them it's almost stationary. Tornado's almost stationary. Moving northeast at about 10. Moving northeast at about 10. Yeah, it's getting very large.
Back in those days, 91, I volunteered and I had a radio from Oklahoma County Emergency Management. And we had a way, it was auto patch, and I could bring up, if I was anywhere in the state of Oklahoma, I could hit a set of code numbers and I could bring up the Oklahoma City patch through either Northwest Oklahoma or Southwest Sorrel repeater, and then Norman Weather could hear me direct, right? And so I remember bringing up the patch when the tornado got on the ground and said, hey, tornado's on the ground, I'm going toward Laverne. Tornado warning was already in effect, and there's a number of chasers on that storm that day. When I first got there, was just a couple of us, and I remember Channel 5, Chris Lee was there, Bill Mitchell was a reporter, was another vehicle, excellent storyteller. He since has passed, but just an incredible individual. And I remember it hit some kind of a cement plant, and the sky, the tornado went from black to like a white chalk, and this white flower, looked like a flower, but it was some kind of a cement plant, and this white looking dust got ingested in the tornado, and it was like a chocolate and white swirl, cotton candy look, going off to the northeast. And it was all inspiring, right? I mean, it's not every day you get a big F3 crossing 100 yards in front of you and then watch it. And I remember a couple of highway patrolmen came north beside us and passed us, went into the town of Laverne, and I just watched it go into the south side of Laverne and go off to the northeast. It was an incredible day.
The footage was good. There was even one clip, I think, that had lightning coming out of the funnel, and my chase friend Tom says, "Look, there's lightning coming out of the funnel," and I'm like, "Wow!" So that was kind of cool to see this all happening at once. But it's been used in all kinds. It's publications and the cover of books inside. Back then, there weren't a lot of tornado images, so anytime you had a good tornado image, it was like, finding gold. You knew that it was going to be worth something.
This was the first time I got to just sit there and kind of enjoy it, and it was a substantial tornado. I think Laverne was the first day where everything seemed to come together, and you'd say, wow, that was a classic chase. We were in good position, and we got to just sit there and leisurely watch this all occur. There was nothing hectic or rushed about it. So that's the part that stands out for me.
It started at the intersections of Highway 3 and 283 and just got bigger and bigger and bigger. It is moving to the north-northeast, picking up more debris. It now looks to be anywhere from a little bit over a quarter of a mile to maybe a half mile wide. It is heading toward the town of Laverne. Warn people in that area to please take cover. I see lights up ahead of me. It is heading toward those lights. So please tell those people to take cover.
All right, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. It's across.
I can't. It's now crossing Highway 3. I have police cars whizzing by me now toward the area. It's crossing Highway 3 right now. The lights went out in most of this area out here. There are people trying to run from the storm. It is now crossing Highway 3. I am directly to the back of it, about 1/8 of a mile behind it. It looks to be about a half a mile wide now, and I've got 2 police cars with lights rolling who just went whizzing by me and rolling in front of me. It is now moving off to the northeast, crossing Highway 3, moving to the northeast now. It is just about all the way across the highway. So we are following that storm now to see what damages it has wrought.